and talked about a lot of interesting stuff. Here's some of the graphics I showed. This is the areas showing the landfalls from this year's hurricane season. Notice there's basically 4 areas that were affected: the Northeast Antilles, a little bit of Central America here, the Northern Gulf Coast, and the Canadian Maritimes. Now, the Northern Gulf Coast was primarily Ida and Claudette, tropical storm conditions. Ida hit down here in Nicaragua as a hurricane and affected Cancun as it passed between Cancun and Mexico. And the Northern Antilles here were affected by Erica and Ana. And, of course, up here in the Canadian Maritimes, Hurricane Bill, when it recurved out just south of the Canadian Maritimes, affected them. But only about 16 cities in the Hurricane City database were affected in 2009 rather. But if we go back to 2008, look at all these cities that were affected. 81%. 81 cities were affected. That's 52% of the cities in the Hurricane City database were affected in 2008. So, again, big difference here. Here's 2009. Here's 2008. A tremendous difference in the amount of cities and islands that were affected in 2008. Now, I went over the ENSO index here, going back to 1950, and all the black circles here on the map indicate years of less than 10 named storms. And if you notice here, around the late 70s all the way back to 1950, there's quite a few years that were right around neutral and had less than 10 named storms. And there were even a few years where there was an El Nino and we had quite a few named storms. So the El Nino science is not an exact science. And this year's El Nino wasn't really that strong, maybe about 1 to 1.5 degrees above normal during the hurricane season. And we've had other years where we've had a lot more named storms with a stronger El Nino. So there's a lot of research yet to be done on El Nino. Now, speaking of El Nino and the forecast, this is the model forecast back from March 2009. And most of the models here indicated that we would be in neutral conditions at the height of the hurricane season. The only model that really nailed this was the COLA model. And it's showing here where we are right now, October, November, and December. It showed we'd be about 1.5 degrees above normal, and that's exactly where we're at right now. So if that model is this good, let's find out what this model said in August of this year, right in the middle of the hurricane season. It indicated that we would be right where we are, right where El Nino was, but then it predicts that by the beginning of the hurricane season next year, we're going to see quite a drop-off in El Nino, and then by the height of next hurricane season, we could conceivably be pretty close to the neutral area here at the height of next year's hurricane season. So we could see quite a bit more activity next year if that model performs properly. Now, here is some of the polls. I didn't go over this on the show last night, but I wanted to pass this along to the people watching these updates. When Hurricane Bill was out in the Atlantic, we asked people, where is Bill going to make landfall? Is it going to go out to sea? Is it going to hit Bermuda, then out to sea? Is it going to hit Bermuda and the Canadian Maritimes? Only the Canadian Maritimes, only the northeastern United States, the mid-Atlantic coast, or the southeast coast. And the number one respondent was most people felt it was going to only hit the Canadian Maritimes, so most people got that right. And Bill was a pretty good system to forecast. There wasn't a lot of surprises with that. Our next poll was taken in November, and we asked people, is the season basically over? Is a hurricane going to hit land before the season ends? Up to that point, we had no hurricanes making landfall. Most people said no. 64% of our respondents said, no, we are not going to see a hurricane make landfall. Sure enough, Ida made landfall in Nicaragua in November as a hurricane, so 64% of our respondents were wrong on that one. Our next image here is for the Ida poll. We asked people when Ida was down in the Caribbean, is this going to hit the United States as a hurricane? 51% said yes, 49% said no. These people were right. The 49% category as this made landfall as a tropical storm and not a hurricane in the United States. So we had no landfalling hurricanes in the U.S. this year. And finally, we asked a poll back early in the hurricane season, do you expect a major hurricane to hit the United States in 2009? Look at this. 75% of the people said yes, I expect a major hurricane to hit landfall in the United States. And only 25% said no. Guess what? You were right. 25% of our respondents hit the nail on the head. We did not have any major landfalling hurricanes, or any hurricanes at all for that matter. All right, now in the next Tropical Update video, in about a week or 10 days from now, I'm going to go over some of the off-season storms that have been historic in history. We have had quite a few seasons where we've had a named storm in the off-season, and I'll get into the details on that in the next update. So that's about it for now. Thank you again for visiting Hurricane City.